Some heroes, I'll start moving debris. Hi, what's your name? It's nice to meet you. I'm Kinetico. I'm a pro hero with Sartek. I'm here to help. Do you know where you are? Okay, that's good. There's been an earthquake. The building you were in has partially collapsed. It's all okay, not to worry. My partner and I have already done our best to stabilize the building, so there's nothing to worry about. Whoa, hey, easy. Please stay still. I know it may not be the most comfortable, but it's important we wait here until medical personnel arrive. Don't worry, it won't be too long, and I'll be here with you the whole time, okay? Do you mind if I check a couple things? All right. If something hurts, please let me know immediately, all right? I am going to scan you and send the data to our medical team, all right? Okay. That should be good. Now, can you wiggle your toes on your right foot, please? Good. And how about the left? Good. And what about your hands? Let's see, left fingers? Wiggle them. Good. And right. Fantastic. All right, you're doing great. Let's see here. What was that? Oh, you're cold. Yeah, not a problem. I can fix that. Let's see here. I've got a standard issue thermal blanket. Here. Let's see. Okay. Try not to move too much. I will tuck it in under you as best I can. It's very important you try not to move, all right? Here. There. A little better? Good. I'm afraid the way the building came down, it turned the hallways into a bit of a maze. My colleagues are reinforcing the way out right now. Don't worry. We will get you and everyone else out of here as soon as possible. Do you remember what you were doing here? Oh, the job interview. Well, that would explain the fancy digs. What kind of job? Were you nervous for the interview? I remember my first job interview. It was at the Pro Hero Agency of Master Effect. It was all part of the UA practicum program. I went to the interview dressed in a brand new suit that my dad and I bought the day before. Arrived 40 minutes early to see a waiting room full of other students, all of them in costume. Everyone was so nervous. I recognized some of the people from my school, all of them older and more experienced than me. Yet nobody could even make small talk. We all just made awkward glances at each other. A tiny room full to the brim with provisional heroes, and then one by one the receptionist called out names. The first guy who went in was this huge fellow. He looked like he could take all of us, no problem. Confidently, he walked up to the receptionist, filled out some paperwork, and strutted into the room. I'm sitting there trying to calm my nerves. Then Suddenly, boom! The big guy that just walked in less than a minute ago comes flying through the wall, like from behind the receptionist, over the desk, taking the potted plant and the bowl of candies with him. Bits of drywall fly everywhere. Some of the ceiling tiles come down. The light fixture is just dangling by its cable in the middle of the room. The big dude is still in the air, flying towards me. I try to use my kinetic powers to slow him down, but he is so much heavier than I expected and hits the ground with a thud you could feel in your chest. He skids to a stop right at my feet. Everyone in the room is petrified. I'm just about to ask the guy if he's all right when the man himself, Master Effect, walks up to the hole in the wall and surveys the damage. The big guy is laying on the floor. He's winded. Master Effect looks directly at him and says, "Get stronger. Maybe you'll have a shot." Then he turns around, shouts, "Next," and waves his hand, and the whole room starts putting itself back together. One of Master Effect's quirks is he can reverse time for non-living objects in a small space. I knew this before, but seeing it firsthand was incredible. The broken glass, the dangling light, even the drywall dust rewound back to its original place. I was so astonished I forgot about the big guy still laying on the floor. I helped him up and offered to walk him back downstairs, but he declined. As we were talking, about half the students in the room made a run for the door, almost trampling me. I had half a mind to follow them, but something stopped me. I don't know why, but I went back to my seat. The receptionist called the next person who had fled, and then another who had also fled, and then finally a student who was still in the room. Moments later, that student walks out looking crushed, and the receptionist calls another. One after the other, students get called in. Less than a minute later, they leave somehow looking worse than they did when they went in. Finally, it was me, just me, left in the room. I was afraid maybe I got the wrong date, or maybe them requesting me was a mistake and they wanted one of my classmates, but sure enough, they called my name. I went in. The office was huge, like in the middle of the penthouse of the building. Large, curved window, pristinely clean. And right in the middle of the room was a desk with Master Effect on one side and a chair on the other. I swallowed my fears, walked up to the desk. Master Effect didn't even look up from his paperwork. He just gestured for me to sit down. I sat in silence for what felt like forever. Eventually, he looked up at me and said, "Do you want to be a hero?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he sneered at me. "Do you have a costume?" Again, I said, "Yes, sir." And he looked me just dead in the face and said, "Good. Wear it tomorrow. Patrol starts at 6 a.m. Don't be late." And just like that, he signs my request, hands it to me, and waves me off. Needless to say, I wasn't sure if I was excited or terrified. I thanked him and walked back to the waiting room. But here's where it gets good. Standing at the desk, chatting with the receptionist, was the big guy from earlier, the one who got ejected through the wall. The moment he saw me, he gave me this big smile and shook my hand. Turns out, he wasn't a student at all. He was Master Effect's sidekick, Balderdash. He's as big and heavy as a boulder, and he can dash up to 200 feet in 5 seconds. He basically threw himself through the wall. That whole thing was just a test to weed out some of the students. Yeah, pretty cruel if you ask me, but me stepping in and helping Boulder was what made me stand out. That in the sports festival. The next day when I told my UA professors I got a practicum with Master Effect, they were more concerned than excited for me. Not about my grades or my safety. Some of the top heroes came out of that agency, but Master Effect definitely has a reputation of not being the friendliest or sanest hero out there. How are you feeling? Well, the good news is you will most likely be fine. The scan I took didn't notice anything serious, but the medical staff did recommend I try not to move you unless absolutely necessary. And the bad news is the people who were coming to get us were diverted to help someone in much more serious condition. So until they get back, we'll have to sit tight for a little bit longer. All right? I know it's scary, but my quirk allows me to feel and control kinetic energy, so trust me when I say this area may look quite damaged, but from a structural standpoint, we're still quite safe. Does that help at all? I'll tell them to hurry. Now, I'm no doctor, but I can take care of some of these scrapes and bruises, okay? This may sting a little bit. Let's see here. There we go. Oh, how long did I work with Master Effect? Let's see. 2 months of practicum, then 2 years of work study, and then 3.5 years as a full-time hero after I graduated from UA. Oh, yeah. It was never boring, to say the least. My teachers were, sorry about this. I know it stings, I'm sorry. My teachers were relieved when I got back from my practicum unscathed. They thought I was nuts when I went back to the agency for my work study. The truth was, even though it was the most brutal 2 months of my life, I learned so much about what it was to be a hero. There's just no denying it. Master Effect was ruthless, like a proper drill sergeant, but his determination and unwavering demand for justice was inspiring. There you go. There. I remember this one time. Sorry. I remember this one time I was on patrol with Master Effect and Bird Queen. Quiet day, nothing to report. Starting to get a little late when Master Effect suddenly stopped. And Bird Queen asked him what he saw, and he didn't answer. He just ran off down the road. When we finally caught up with him, he turned to us and said, "A kid was kidnapped here. We have to help them." I couldn't see anything. No signs of a struggle, just a quiet little side road beside a small cafe. Lots of windows, a little traffic. Surely if there was a kidnapping, someone would have reported it. At the time, I didn't know the full extent of Master Effect's quirk. Not only could he rewind time for objects, he could also see like an hour into the past. Now, it wasn't picture perfect as someone like Sir Night-Eye, and it only worked sometimes or something like that. I'm actually still not 100% sure of how it works. But anyway, I didn't know any of this, and I was afraid he had finally snapped. He turned to us and said quietly, "You see that guy sitting at the table in the dark blue hoodie? He was there when this happened. Don't let him escape." I turned to Bird Queen to see what she was going to say, but she was already in the air. By the time I looked back, Master Effect was already most of the way across the street. I didn't know what to do. I had only been on work study for a little over a week, chasing down purse snatchers and petty thieves. I did the worst thing a hero could do. I froze. Sure enough, the second the guy saw Master Effect making a beeline for him, he tried to make a break for it, but it was no use. Bird Queen had dive-bombed him and pinned him down to the street. I ran up just bracing for the tongue lashing I was about to get, but it never came. Well, I mean, it came later, but I'll get there. So the guy's on the ground shouting about how he'll never talk and us heroes are not welcome here and standard villain stuff. Bird Queen was holding him down. Master Effect was interrogating him. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing, so I just kind of started directing traffic and keeping the bystanders away. Then I noticed a group of people exit the cafe all at the same time and start walking towards us. There. Last one. That should help a little bit. So where was I? Oh, right. So a group of people came out of the cafe and all started walking to us at the same time. And they were all dressed similarly. They were all wearing long coats and black slacks, and they just kind of started walking up and getting closer, and then they all started yelling at us to let him go, and he was their friend, and we needed to get out of there, and stuff like that. And I was still unsure of their motivation, but I could definitely tell something was off about their behavior. I told them to stay back. They started getting more and more agitated. I looked back at Master Effect just for like a second. When I looked back, every single one of them had pulled a gun out of their jackets and opened fire on us. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good. My team was able to get the wounded person moving now, so we should be next. Won't be too long now. Oh, right, sorry. Group of people came out of oh, yeah. So they all started shooting at us. And to most heroes, that would be a pretty serious situation to be in. But like I mentioned earlier, I can control and absorb kinetic energy, so bullets are kind of worthless against me. So they're firing like crazy. All the bullets are falling at my feet. They all run out of ammo, start to reload, but at that point, all of my doubts about them being innocent had been pretty much put to bed, and my UA combat training had kind of kicked in. That and each shot had given me between 500 and 1,000 joules of stored energy, so I don't want to brag, but it was a pretty one-sided fight after that. Plus, the commotion had attracted a few more pro heroes and a whole station worth of police. The guy in the blue hoodie, seeing me slam his whole friend group into the wall a few times, loosened his tongue and he spilled what had happened. The coffee shop turned out to be a money laundering scheme for a crime boss in the area. And the kid who was kidnapped was the son of a police chief who was investigating them. So, less than an hour later, me, Master Effect, Bird Queen, Balderdash, and probably 30 more pro heroes from the agency quietly surrounded the crime boss's house. Neutrino and Astral Gypsy used their quirks to look through the building and found the kid on the first floor. Then Bird Queen and I think Sandman took out the guards while we all pushed in and surrounded the room. I could hear my heart beat. I was so nervous, and Master Effect wanted me up front when we breached, so just in case there was any shooting, I could catch them. But I was nearly shaking when Balderdash put his big hand on my shoulder and gave me a nod. It wasn't much, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone. And everyone around me, even though I didn't know them for very long, I did trust them. So, 3, 2, 1, Balderdash blasted through the outside wall, me close behind. There were 5 or 6 people in the room, plus the kid. They looked like they were just about to film the hostage video when we busted in. They definitely weren't expecting us. We took them completely by surprise. I saw one of them, the thugs, he was reaching into his jacket to pull a gun out, and I was preparing to stop the shot, but Master Effect rewound time on just the gun, sending it flying back into his chest. Planted him back on the couch, just in time for Balderdash to blast him in the couch through the back wall. 10 seconds later, everyone was in custody. The boy was back in his father's arms. Just like the end of a movie. Yeah, just like that. Happy ending. Well, kinda. When we got back to the agency, it was already 3 in the morning. Master Effect called me into his office and said, "You froze, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he looked me up and down and said, "You're new at this. It was bound to happen. But you pulled it together when it counted. You may have saved some lives today." And I said, "Thank you, sir." And then he reached under his desk and pulled out a spray bottle and a squeegee and said, "But you're still getting punished. Wash the windows of the office and lock up when you're done." And he tossed me his ID card and left. Well, yeah, he did it. I was just glad he didn't make me do 5,000 push-ups or something. Plus, I had class at 7 in the morning, so an hour of washing windows was like the best case scenario. How are you feeling? A little better, at least? That's good. It shouldn't be too much longer now. I've been talking nonstop for a while. Thanks for listening to me reminisce. It's been quite a few years since I left Master Effect's agency. It's fun to remember. Another story? Sure. Okay. Let's see. There was the time Master Effect and I took down a tropical bird smuggling ring. There was the time I was on patrol and got attacked by a giant lobster monster. Okay, I actually have a good one, if you don't mind. Sure. This is probably my best story. So, 2 years into being a full-time hero, after I graduated from UA, I was hired on at Master Effect's company. He actually offered me the job on the last day of my work study, so while my classmates were scrambling, sending out applications, I was all set. So I get called into Master Effect's office, and he says, "You need a new sidekick, but for now I have a job for you." And he just drops this stack of folders down in front of me. He says, "These are the third-year students who will be here in about an hour for their work studies." So I'm thinking, well, that's kind of awesome. I'll get a student to show around, show what it's like to be a hero, just like Balderdash showed me. This will be great. And he continued, "They all did well in testing. Some of them were even top of their class in the sports festival." And I'm thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. And he goes, "So what I need you to do is evaluate how they react in a stressful environment." And so again, I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Wait a minute. I'm going through the wall, aren't I? He's like, "Yes, you are." And so, on the outside, I'm like, "Sir, don't you think that's a bit cruel to the students who are already stressing about it?" And inside, I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to do a flip through the wall." He ignored my fake protests and he asked if I still had this goofy suit I wore when I first applied, which I did. But it hardly fit anymore after 5 years of training. So, nevertheless, I ran home, put the suit on, went back to the office, found my way up to the waiting room where there were already a few students waiting. So, for a moment, I was scared that they could tell my suit was too tight, but everyone was so nervous. I could have showed up in a clown suit and nobody would have noticed. So, one by one, the room filled up, but there weren't nearly as many people as when I first applied, but I didn't think anything of it. Soon enough, my name was called. I walked up to the receptionist, pretended to fill out some paperwork, walked into the office. Now, funny thing was, Master Effect was standing up against the wall looking through a peephole at the students as they showed up. He glanced over to me and said, "Give it a good 30 seconds, then go through the wall where I made the X. That way you won't hit anybody." So, and pretend you're really hurt. Make it look good. So I was quite excited. So I walked up to the big red X on the wall, gave myself a little running start, gave myself a bit of charge, and I accelerated myself through the wall. Now, maybe the wall was pre-weakened. Maybe I was just a little too excited, but I gave myself way too much power. So I went through the wall, over the receptionist's desk, and straight through the window on the 38th floor. So when I opened my eyes, I could see the building moving away. And I thought to myself, wow, I messed this up big time. So I started falling. I turn myself face down and try to catch as much glass as I can before it falls and hurts someone. Again, kinetic energy means I can decelerate myself before I hit the ground. Not too big of a deal for me, but thank God there was nobody on the street. Suddenly, I feel something around my waist, and I'm slowing down. And I look at my waist and it's some kind of metal cable. So I stop moving down suddenly and then start moving back up. And I'm thinking, so this has got to be a quirk, obviously, but I don't know anybody from the agency with this kind of power, so it must be one of the students. So I'm impressed instantly. And I don't need to save myself anymore, so I played dead, I guess. As soon as I got back up to the window and hauled back into the room, I'm playing dead, so I can't see who saved me, but I can hear a girl shouting, like enraged shouting. You're a bleeping psycho. You're supposed to be a bleeping hero, and here you go almost killing a student. What the bleep is wrong with you? I'm way too curious, so I peek with one eye and see Master Effect backed up into a corner with one of the students chewing into him. The student looked back at me, sees my eye was open, and rushes over to me. Oh, thank God you're all right. Can you talk? Is anything broken? I'm still pretending a bit, so I sit up and look around, and there's me, the receptionist, Master Effect, and the student. All the other students had fled. And I mean ran. There were backpacks left under seats, coats still on the back of chairs. It's funny to think about now, but at the time I was more afraid of what Master Effect was going to do to me. But when I looked up at Master Effect, he had this big, goofy smile on his face. And he says, so what do you think? And taking this as a sign to stop acting, I sit up and say, yep, I'm impressed. And the student looks at me, and then back to Master Effect, and he says, welcome aboard. And her expression was mostly rage, but a little bit of relief, I guess. She was not happy, to say the least. She angrily grabbed her bag and stormed up to the counter. The counter was still covered in bits of wall, and she slammed her application on the counter and just held out a pen to Master Effect, who signed it. And, he was smiling the whole time, and then she grabbed the page and stormed out of the room, and Master Effect, called down the hallway and was like, be here at 6 a.m., wear your costume. And she kind of shouted, fine, and then kept walking. So that was fun, but that's not even the best part of the story. So the next day, I'm waiting in Master Effect's office, reading over her hero profile. Her hero name was Iron Maiden. She could control anything made of iron so long as she was touching it. So for her first day, we were assigned to patrol zone 82, I think, which is like residential in a little tiny strip mall in a nice park. It's like the least likely place in the whole city to get attacked. So we head out. She's still angry with me. I try to explain how the test was something that happened to me and I was never in any real danger, and she was still mad. But at one point she said, well, how can I trust you in Master Effect if you pull stuff like this? And I replied, honestly, you can't really trust you can trust Master Effect when push comes to shove, but for the most part, if you're going to be a part of this agency, Master Effect will pull stuff like this on you pretty constantly. And he'll never put you in a situation that it would be too much for you to handle, but it will feel like it. And I go on to explain that Master Effect is notorious when it comes to training, and even though you'll come out the other side a better hero, the process of getting there will be some of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. And even though her expression didn't change, I could tell she may be regretting her decision a little bit. So we go on patrol. We have a few things here or there. Helped find a lost dog. Filled a couple of missing item reports. Forwarded them to the police. Just basic hero stuff. And over time, we started to get along. So I learned she was from a long line of pro heroes, and she's going to UA, which is cool because I went to UA. And anyway, so we're about 10 minutes from being done with our shift, and I get a text from Master Effect, just like a location ping and the words, hurry. I immediately switch from nice stroll through the park to full-on let me at him hero mode. She gets the same text, but understandably she is a bit skeptical. The biggest downside to Master Effect's brutal training strategy is you tend to get trust issues, but I explained that even if it's a 99% chance to be fake, our jobs as heroes don't give us the luxury of doubting it, even the most basic calls. So we take off downtown, and immediately it's apparent this is no training exercise. People are running for cover. Police are directing people the best they can. There are burning cars. The road looks like it's been torn up in areas. Just absolute chaos. We run past the police line and meet up with a hero who's helping put out a big semi-truck that was burning and ask what the situation is. He's just about to explain what's going on when, and I'm not exaggerating here, a dragon rounds the corner. 10 stories tall, red and black scales, wingspan of at least a city block. You probably saw it on the news. It was 2012, I'm pretty sure. It was the front page news in my city like a week. So it takes one look at us, rears up, and unleashes a torrent of fire at us. So we've established I am immune to bullets. I don't take fall damage. And what I'm not immune to, however, is getting burnt to a crisp. So the first thing that comes to mind is I could probably blast myself above the fire, but I don't have enough energy stored up yet. Plus that would leave behind my new partner and the other hero, and that's just no way I could do that. So while I'm trying to think of a new plan, suddenly a massive steel barrier shoots up in front of us just in time for the fire to blast against it. While I was trying to figure out the plan, my partner grabbed a hold of the burning truck and in an instant twisted and shaped the metal of the frame into a huge shield. The problem was the intense power and heat was too much for my partner to handle, and the barrier started to collapse. So with my quirk as best I could, I braced it, and the other hero used his water jets to cool it down. There were flames that started to peek through. It was a solid 10 seconds of nothing but fire on all sides of the barrier. At the end, it was burning red hot and had flaming pieces of seat and foam stuck in it, but we were alive. The barrier collapsed as soon as she stopped touching it, and unfortunately she burned her hands a little bit, but the dragon paused, which I thought at first was about to attack again, but instead it spread its enormous wings and with a single flap sent cars flying with the wind alone. It took off and started flying away. The other hero that was there thanked us greatly and helped bandage my partner's hands. Soon after, a truck comes barreling around the corner following the dragon. It stops in front of us. Sure enough, Master Effect is standing in the back. He calls out, "Are you hurt?" And partner holds up her hands and says, "Just a bit," she replies, and for a second he looks genuinely relieved, but then he snaps back. Says, "Good, Kinetico. Get in the truck. Iron Maiden, stay here to help with evacuation." I'm Kinetico, by the way. And she wanted to say something but held her tongue, even though she definitely wanted to go. And seeing as she just saved my life, I wasn't about to ditch her now, so I shouted back, she should come with us. Master Effect glared at me, but I stood firm. She saved our lives. We need her to stop that thing. And eventually he turned back to the front and said, "We don't have time for this. Both you get in now." And so we both hopped in and sped off following the dragon. In the back of the truck with us were a few more heroes I recognized, some of them crazy strong. And while we drove, we got filled in on the situation. Apparently that dragon was in fact a mad scientist who was doing illegal experimentation with reptiles and attempted to create an army of dragons that he controlled. But when he was found out, he injected himself with the serum and went on a rampage. They were not sure where he was headed, but from his path they believed he was targeting the genetic laboratory that fired him a few years ago. Problem was, even though the roads were more or less clear, the dragon could fly way faster than we could drive, so by the time we arrived he was already tearing into the building. We got out of the truck and quickly found another group of heroes trying to figure out a plan. The building did not have enough time to evacuate fully, so every second counted. We received a report from one of our scientists that evacuated. He said he worked with the mad scientist and told us the side effect of becoming a dragon meant his mind transformed as well, or something like that. For all intents and purposes, he was an animal following his base instincts, which in this case were his last thoughts he had before the transformation. I guess thoughts of his old job. Also, the serum would only work for 2 to 3 hours at the maximum, and when it ended, he would hopefully return back into a human. Unfortunately, he'd only been a dragon for 40 minutes to an hour now. But on the other hand, we had a plan now, so we communicated with other agencies and heroes and immediately started putting our plan into action. Cannonback and Airstrike did their best to keep him focused on the buildings that were already evacuated, while not getting roasted themselves. Then Bird Queen and Master Effect went about rigging several fire extinguishers to explode with the help of Nitro Man. Meanwhile, Iron Maiden, myself, and about 30 other heroes went about getting as much steel as we could get our hands on and turning it into long cables. Cars, streetlights, sewer pipes, everything. When everything was set, we called over the radio to Bird Queen. she flew up to the dragon and got his attention by dropping the fire extinguisher bombs on his face, which I guess would irritate basically anyone. So as expected, he turned to follow Bird Queen, who swooped down to road level and flew into a building. Now, she narrowly avoided the flames, and as expected, the dragon jumped down off the building to get a better angle to attack. But when he took a step forward, Nitro Man and Richter blew the ground out under him, dropping him a good 15 meters into a transit tunnel below the road. Now, this was not enough to stop him, so at about this time, all the strength-based heroes took turns pummeling me and charging up my quirk so I could fire the harpoons. So I fired the harpoons over the dragon, and they were attached to the end of the cables. So I basically created a few straps, if you will, over top of the dragon. And the harpoons were barbed so that they would get stuck in the concrete of the buildings on the other side. And then once they were there, Iron Maiden used her quirks to shrink down the cables and keep the dragon down, basically, and keep the wings so they couldn't extend and couldn't fly out of the hole. And then, just for good measure, Lightning Samurai and Gigavolt kept the cables charged like a taser, keeping the dragon from wriggling out of the hole or snapping the cables. It was absolutely exhausting. Every now and again, a cable would come loose or break, and I'd have to fire it over again, or it would snap, and Iron Maiden would have to make a new one. By the time the dragon started shrinking, I was 90% bruise. Iron Maiden could barely stand. Everybody else was bloody and burned. It took the mad scientist about 30 minutes to shrink back into scientist size. And I guess turning yourself into a 10-story dragon had some permanent side effects, as he was now covered head to toe in red and black scales. And the police loaded his unconscious body into the prisoner pod and shipped him off to Tartarus prison. The rampage lasted 2 hours, 10 minutes, and the damage was nearly $5 billion. Everybody got sent to the hospital. The worst injuries were some broken bones and a lot of burns. None too seriously, fortunately. I had a fractured ankle from when a cable just snapped back and hit my leg. Plus, overusing my quirk, I had a significant amount of bruising. Iron Maiden was treated for the burns and abrasions on her hands from handling all the cables, and Bird Queen was pretty well singed, and her wings smelled like burnt hair for a few months, but all in all, could have gone way worse. It took a couple of weeks to heal, and we were back on patrol. I gained Master Effect's trust. Iron Maiden was a legend at school. And that's pretty much it. Just in time. Over here. Well, looks like the rescue party has arrived. We'll get you to the hospital, and then you'll have your own story to tell one day. I'm going to have to stay here in the building until we're sure it's empty. But if you have any questions, you could always ask Iron Maiden. She's coming with the medical team right now. Thanks again for letting me reminisce. I hope it was fun. And I hope it helped pass the time. You're welcome. I hope to see you again soon.